Hello folks and welcome. Zorin 17.3 Core, the non-pro version. I'm filming in Wayland today instead of X11. And my recording software can be a little bit sluggish at times. The subscription logo should be in the corner of a person with yellow brackets. I got well over 500 videos on all kinds of things. So Linux is for all skill levels and Linux is for all ages. Today I'm going to be talking about firewalls. And I can get as deep as you want, but more importantly, we can also talk about basics. What firewalls do for you, and how to turn on the firewall and rules, and also maybe some profiles. A lot of different firewalls are found on different computers. Maybe you heard of Red Hat before. So one thing that Linux Mint and Zorin share is this firewall. It's called UFW or Gufw. So I'm going to turn that on through here. You can find it through your settings under Network. Gary is just a made-up name user for today. And this is your firewall disabled. How do I know that? Because it's gray. So if you want, I'm going to close that back so we can only have one thing sitting here. So UFW Gufw firewall is a very simple firewall to configure, unlike some. Some systems, you may have heard, there's several hundred Linux distributions out there nowadays. And some of them have the firewalls active and some of them do not when you install the systems or desktops. And a lot of times it drives people nuts when they're trying to figure out why things don't work. Somebody will activate SSH server on their machine because they want to do remote connections or even SFTP. Secure File Transfer Protocol, and it's not working because they didn't realize their firewalls were on with no rules. So when firewalls are on, we need rules to have some things working. Not everything, but some things. All right, so I will also be showing toward the latter part of this video how to import and export profiles. I have a couple of them in here as samples. But we're going to start with the very basics first. So the home house thing will get you started, and you can use a regular computer mouse and scroll up and down and read these things. But I'm just going to show you a couple of things today. I'm not going to do a 99% deep dive, but I will do a fairly comprehensive. So rules you need when firewalls are on. This is currently gray, that means it's off. You also have reports and logs. Really not going to talk too much about that. Now, when we activate a firewall, we turn it on. As simple as flipping the switch. When the firewall is enabled, you can see the message at the bottom. There's a couple of things that do work, though, without you having to put rules. One of them is your web browser. The other one is your software store and updater. But when you start installing stuff like SSH server, software, or maybe KDE Connect, just to name two, then we need rules when your firewalls are on. Otherwise, they don't work. It will drive you nuts. Zorin Connect also. So when we have incoming deny, that's exactly what it means. We're trying to keep people out. That's generally what firewalls do. And we're allowing outgoing. In this capacity right now, that means my browser will work and my software store will work. But if I install anything like SSH server software, that's not going to work. I need rules for that. I actually have one that's already pre-configured for that. But we're going to talk about profiles a little bit later. That's done with these things here. Now also, depending on where you set these is what the color of the shield is. Let me give you an example of allow. Keep in mind my recording software is a little sluggish, but we have red shield now. And if I go the opposite direction, deny, it's that color and other combinations. So generally what is default is allow outgoing and deny incoming. May I advise you, if you're the type of person that like to see screenshots, is to go ahead and use that tool, multifunction key downstairs. Click that. It should default to the camera, which is screenshot, and you can make a selection. You can either do the selection area, full screen, which is wallpaper included, or just window. I usually prefer that one. And then just hit that button, and it'll save it into your pictures folder. I'll give you an example of what one looks like, and it will be a picture of this. So it will be found in pictures, screenshot. And that's what it looks like. And you can see rules are in here. All right, that's all I'm going to say on your screenshot tool. Now let's talk about the plus key. We add a rule, and to remove a rule, you use the minus button. So at first blush, you're going to say, oh, there's too many settings. Not really. We already have the allow policy, so we're creating a direction in to allow something to work. Well, what is that something? Well, that depends on what you're trying to install. These are all different profiles. They're actually located in your etc. Gufw folder, and I'll show that in a sec. Might as well show it now. Let's get this out of the way. All right, if you're curious where the location of this is. So I'm going to open this up into the etc. folder, and I'm just going to type Gufw because it'll take me a long time to scroll for this folder. So in here is called App Profiles. All right, I'll go full screen. And you can see, I made the icon small on purpose. You can see there's a plethora of things in here, but a couple of these have red X's. These are my personal ones I created myself. These are all profiles for the firewall. I'll just pick one out of the blue. Here's Hexen, right click. All of these files are owned by root. That means you've got to have root permissions to add or remove anything in here. That includes creating your own. These that I created with the red X are personally created. I created an SSH profile and a Zorin profile for Zorin Connect. They're located right here, and I'll show you that in a little bit. Okay, these are the ones that you were just looking at. Let's go back on topic. We are wanting to add a rule. How about if we just pick SSH? Yeah, might as well. So instead of me scrolling through that massive list of stuff, just type in SSH. Okay, and it'll fill in the application name right there. So the policy in this case is allow, but we are creating a rule to allow indirection. You can also generate both. It just adds another 2 rules. But you can leave the indirection, you can leave the category, you can leave the subcategory, and this generally uses port 22 by default. If you are wanting to use a different port, we can certainly assign a different port. There is also the settings on this side. There is port 22 right there. So if we want to keep the defaults, we're going to do that. Now when I hit go, you can see that it only uses a single port, and that would be 22 TCP. It actually adds 2 rules. And the reason for that is, if you're not aware of this, but IP version 4 and IP version 6 are out there. Your firewall knows this. IP version 6 will eventually replace IP version 4 completely. At least that's my thought. We ran out of IP4 addresses on the internet, I think, a 3 years ago. So a lot of people are starting to use IP version 6. But in either case, the firewall rules puts in both of these. So this is IP version 4, and version 6 has a bracket on it. Let's add another rule. This time I'm going to pick something in the Z's, like Zorin. Zorin Connect, if you're not familiar with that, is another tool that we can use to do all kinds of things with. And I will add that rule in there. We're just talking firewalls today. You can look up what Zorin Connect does if you don't know what it does. And also KDE Connect is very similar. All right, so these two here are the IP version 4 rules, and 5 and 6 are version 6. These are port numbers. TCP you will find, and also UDP. A lot of games like to use UDP. UDP is a very fast protocol. It's used for games, and I'll just pick one out of the blue here. Let me find one. I think Battlefield 1942 uses UDP only. It does. It's port. Here, I'll just add the rule in there so you can see it. It's a single entry. However, it's version 4 and 6. It uses port 14,567 UDP. That's a game. So that's how we add rules. Now, how do we delete rules? It's pretty simple. The ones that are highlighted, I can just hit the minus button. If I wanted all of these gone, I would just click on the one, then hold down your control key and use your computer mouse and click the rest of these. Then go ahead and let go of the control key and hit the minus. And you're back to default. It takes a second, by the way. It's not instantaneous, but when you add rules, my personal advice is always toggle this on and off. Now, we can also talk about profiles. We have public. We have office. And again, you can configure them. What if you want to add your own? Well, you can. I'm going to first import one that I created earlier for SSH. So add profiles, click, and open. I pre-configured this earlier. Now you can see that the profile has been imported, and now you can choose it in the profiles. So at least it's a very intuitive at telling you what to do. It's right here. I called it SSH. I can also change its name. Now this is SSH only. If I was running SSH server software on this machine with a firewall on, I definitely want these on. And again, if I change the port numbers, I need to do that. And also the machine is trying to log into this, whether it be me or maybe somebody else on the staff, then you need to also inform them that the port numbers have been changed. But we're using default here. Now, if you're wanting to rename your profiles, may I suggest that you just switch this over for a second, hit the edit button, preferences, anything that has to do with renaming or deleting, change it to another profile. So in this case, I can actually remove that out of the menu, not out of your hard drive. I can also rename this thing by double clicking. Now, if you're inclined to put spaces in things, SSH and more, and you hit enter, you get a complaint. Use only letters, numbers, dashes, and underscores. Doesn't say anything about spaces, but spaces is not good either. If you've ever heard my speech on writing script files, you got to do some extra line codes when you're adding spaces in folder names. All right, I generally try to avoid that so I can make my script files shorter. It's kind of the similar concept here. So if I wanted that SSH and more, then I can just leave it that way. That's perfectly acceptable. Now, when you find it in your profiles, it's whatever name you gave it, if you want to get goofy. However, when you re-import this thing, it will still have the same profile name when you created that originally. Mine was SSH. That's the name of the profile I gave it. All right, so I'm going to switch this up, and we're going to do this from scratch. I'm going to create a profile for some of your more advanced users. We're going to start with plus, and what do I want to pick? Let me scroll through this list and see if something triggers here. All right, how about Dropbox? All right, so Dropbox is going to be using, looks like that, and we're just going to add that rule there. And you can see all these different rules. It even adds the port 80 rule, which I thought was funny. But in either case, you can see all these things here. Now we're going to actually create and export it into a profile. Export. You need to give this thing a name. It could be any name of your choosing. But since we're dealing with Dropbox, why don't we just call it drop. Drop B. How's that? Is that good enough? Save the profile. All right, so since I created that with my home, I'm going to delete these on purpose. So I'm holding down the control key while I'm clicking to highlight all of them. So we can go back to just default for the home folder. Now, since the last one I had was a silly name there, we're going to import another one. And I'm going to click App Profiles here and go find that thing called Drop B and hit Open. And then it will tell you that it's now in your menu. And it is right here. So what I'm going to do here, though, is I'm going to hit Edit, Preferences, and then Drop B is sitting here. I'm going to put in the OX on the end and hit Enter. And you can see that I can't rename a current profile. That's why I recommended that you switch this to something else if you're deleting and renaming. If I go back in here now with my home profile selected and go back to that Drop B and double click on it, I can add the OX on it rather easily. And then close. And then try to close. How's that? So you put whatever name you want to these things. They're just a handy shortcut name. You can call it whatever you want. Just don't put spaces in there. All right. In either case, if you want to get rid of this out of the profile menu, I can show you basically you need to select something else. And then you can actually go into the preference box, go find that thing, and hit minus. I'll even delete the other one, and close. Now I should have 3 profiles in here. Are they gone? No, they are still on your hard drive. So how much of these are consuming? Well, you can see the spaces it's consuming. What would I need to do to get permanently get rid of these things? You log into your file manager in root mode, and you go into the etc Gufw app profiles folder, and you find those in there by name. Do a screenshot if you like. Find them by name and you can delete them as long as you're logged into your file manager in root mode. If you don't care about leaving those, then you can just leave them there. All I did was delete the shortcuts. So recap time, we have the home profile, we have the office and public. You can do whatever you want to with those. The default for active firewall is incoming deny, outgoing allow, and it will allow your web browsers to work and also your software store. You can install software and also do software updates. Just remember this. If you install Secure Shell server services, you will need to put in port 22 for, at least if you're using port 22 for default, to allow your firewall to work properly for incoming requests. SSH client software does work. I will actually show you that. So let me double check this to make sure the firewall is still on. So you can see this. I apologize for closing the box. Okay, so we have no rules, in other words. But I can tell you I can still SSH into a machine from here because I have one actually sitting on my local network. All right. You can see it's requesting a password. Otherwise, it would have just sat there. Now I'm logged into another machine. It's not Zorin. I like that option because it strips out personal information. Anyways, this is MX23.6. It's an XFCE desktop also. Actually, I shouldn't say also because I think this is known. But anyways, I can get a wealth of information when I use SSH, including what kind of hard drive that thing has. That remote machine has a Samsung SSD, 990 EVO plus 2 terabyte. It's actually an NVMe. I can see it from here. I can even read the temperature on that machine as far as the chip is concerned. I don't know how accurate these are, but it does report that. It also tells me how many days since it was last updated or rebooted. It's 2 days ago, 5 hours and 1 minute. How much RAM? How much is in use? I think you can see the benefit of maybe using SSH. I can even use the file manager to use SFTP if I wanted to. So opening this thing up, you probably have not discovered this yet, but you can actually use the address field. Actually, let me just make this pinch smaller. Well, that's a little too much pinch. So trying to drag this box back over here. And let me expand this out just a pinch. I'm going to use Control L to get into the address field and type in SSH colon 2//, same username, at MX99, that's the name of the computer, .local. I can also use the IP address. It's asking me for a password. I'm logged into a foreign machine right now. This is not this Zorin machine, but this is the other one. And I'll even look at the pictures folder on that machine. Why isn't it giving me thumbnails? Because I'm online. It says SFTP, but didn't I put in SSH? Yes, because that gets converted in your file manager to SFTP, Secure File Transfer Protocol. This is now encrypted. What I can do though is I can go into my preference box and turn on the thumbnails for everything. It's a little slower though. Just remember that. Now you can see thumbnails. This is on a foreign machine. And I can literally grab these 3 images. I'll throw it into my downloads folder just temporarily. Then I can transfer them directly into my pictures folder if I want to. That's the power of SSH and SFTP. But everything works together. Firewalls are necessary evil a lot of times, and especially if you're running anything with server services, my philosophy is always run firewalls. Doesn't matter if it's on your local network or on the internet. But again, it is your system and your choice. Thank you for watching.